Best pals.
The Super Nintendo undeniably has one of the greatest game libraries of all time. With over 1,749 games released worldwide, there are hundreds of great games. But which one is the best? We asked the best pals and their friends which is the best Super Nintendo game. Alright, so I've lost sleep. I've racked my brain, and I think I've finally decided what I think is the best Super Nintendo game, and that goes to the original Donkey Kong Country. Now, some people will say Donkey Kong Country 2 is better. I won't argue, but I much rather prefer the first game. It's very nostalgic for me. I spent a lot of time playing it with my cousins in two players. I was always Donkey Kong. I'm not a big Diddy Kong fan. And there's so many hidden rooms and collectibles and secrets that even if you play through the whole game, chances are, unless you have a guide, you're not going to find everything. So the replayability is off the charts. It's just so fun. It's so fluent. It still looks gorgeous. Such a great game. And that is why, in my opinion, Donkey Kong Country is the best Super Nintendo game.
When I was a kid, I didn't even like Super Nintendo. Sega did what Nintendo don't. The Super Nintendo's processor maxed out at 3.58 MHz, whereas the Sega Genesis's processor, the Motorola 68000, maxed out at 7.68 MHz, a speed which gaming historians now refer to as blast processing. I'd see people playing their Marios and their Metroids, and I would think, too slow. That was until I played Uniracers. There's nothing on the system quite like it, and when you play as many games as I do, novelty is everything. In real life, when I try to ride a unicycle, I just fall off of it. But in Uniracer, I am the unicycle, going at Mach speeds. For me, two-player modes are everything, and it doesn't get better than that head-to-head stunt mode. It's a fun time flexing on your friends, seeing who can hit more twists and flip cities. So if you haven't tried Uniracers, give it a shot. On a system well known for its turn-based RPGs, it's a great game that fulfills your need for speed. Also check out my store Nerdtopia in St. Clair Shores.
I'm Rob from Perch and I came out here to talk about what I believe is the greatest Super Nintendo game of all time. Honorable mention to NBA Jam and Mario Kart, but I'm going all in on NHL 94. One of my favorite games, one of the first ones from the EA Sports line for hockey. Really fun game, great soundtrack, great music, just a little 8-bit arcade stuff going on. Great cheesy goals, good game flow, lots of fun, really easy to play, just a good hang out with your friends who like hockey and just hit everybody, score some goals, have some fun. Yeah, that's my pick for best sports game. I just think it was kind of ahead of its time, and it set a nice path for all the NHL games to follow, which I still play today. So that's my opinion, and that's what I'm going with for best Super Nintendo game, NHL 94.
Hi, I am Saturnine from Saturnine Gaming, and I would like to tell you about my favorite Super Nintendo game. My favorite Super Nintendo game is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. I am a huge Legend of Zelda fan, and I think this game is probably the best in the series. It was the first Zelda game I ever owned myself. It wasn't the first one I played, but it was my first one that I owned. And I spent hours when I was a kid getting lost in the exploration of this game. I was super confused when I made it into the Dark World and became a rabbit, but it was all around a lot of fun trying to figure out where to go next. This game has amazing exploration, some fun puzzles. It's got so much to do, a huge world to explore, which is big for its time. And also, it has one of the best soundtracks on the entire Super Nintendo. The music in this game is fantastic. There's lots I could say about this game, but one thing I want to point out is that I like this game so much, I actually have two different versions of it. The game is identical except for the front cover. This is the Player's Choice version, and this is just the regular Nintendo cartridge. But it was such a popular game, they released a reskin of a Player's Choice version. So I think that's kind of cool too. But all in all, this is a fantastic exploration game for the Super Nintendo, groundbreaking for its time, and one of the absolute best on the entire console. And I think everyone should check this game out at some point.
Yo, what up? It is your boy Crossface Gaming here. So it's funny, last night, or maybe I guess this morning, I was thinking about, hey, you know, I should probably do some videos kind of going through and counting all the games I have, you know, per console. And lo and behold, I log into YouTube, and the Best Pals YouTube channel already has that done. So I actually thought that was pretty cool. Great minds think alike. But anyways, if you look at my collection, my Super Nintendo collection is actually one of my least impressive collections. I didn't have it as a kid, didn't really collect for it. I actually have 80 CDI games, 80 CDI games. I have 30 Vectrex games, and I have only 8 Super Nintendo games. But this brought back a flood of memories, trying to think, all right, would I go with Link to the Past? Would I go with Super Castlevania 4, which I beat on the SNES Classic? But I would have to go with Mega Man X. And the reason why, back in the day, in the 90s, I remember I had like a Windows 3.1 PC, barely run. It might not have been a 486, it might have been a 386, and somehow got that upgraded to Windows 95. And around that time, I found a demo of like the first level of Mega Man X on PC, and I was like, oh my god, this game is like incredible. I was looking up like the lore and stuff like that, trying to find everything about that, and I tried my damnedest to find some kind of illegal copy of Mega Man X that I could play on my PC, because again, I had a Sega Genesis, I didn't have a Super Nintendo, and wasn't able to do it. But anyways, just brought back a flood of memories. This took everything that was good about Mega Man, and if you're obviously don't know, I'm a huge fan of Mega Man, and basically upped it, and again, finding the secrets, the Hadouken, you know, all that good stuff. Like, it just was a phenomenal game. So my pick for the best game for the Super Nintendo is going to be Mega Man X.
Hey guys, so I wanted to talk about my favorite Super Nintendo game, and I'm going to have to probably give it to a Japanese title called Jinsei Game, and it's the game of life in English, but the Japanese version is a little bit different. So it plays very similarly to Monopoly, where you're collecting resources, collecting property, and it's kind of a great family game, or not even necessarily with family, or just with friends. So it's up to 4 players, and you know, for example, you start as a baby, and you roll the dice, and with my luck, my little baby ends up being stupid with no skills, but really strong. I don't know, it's hilarious the kind of outcomes you get, because it's all by chance. You know, as you grow up from a baby, you can enter school, try and enter society. There's all kinds of different little paths you can take, and I just think it's a better version of Monopoly. So if you got time, give it a chance. If you don't want to try the Japanese version, which there are translations for, then I would recommend just trying the normal Game of Life.
My all-time favorite Super Nintendo game is Earthbound. It was released in 1995, so I was probably about 12 years old when I first started playing it. And I would rent it over and over again from Hollywood Video, who actually I ended up buying my copy from when they stopped carrying Super Nintendo games. It was actually my first RPG-style game. Mostly I played platformers when I was growing up. And I loved the freedom. Like, I could go anywhere, I could do anything. And then I found out that every time you killed an enemy, you got stronger. So I would just wander around grinding, which I didn't know the term for at the time, because it was fun. Like, I would get new powers, I would get new upgrades. So yeah, that was the best game. I also loved that it took place in modern times, instead of, like, you know, some medieval era or something like that. I could go to an ATM and withdraw cash from my allowance, and I used a phone to call my dad to save my game, and there were malls to go into and explore. And so yeah, it was a really fun game. If you like RPGs and alien invasions, try that out. And I actually also do art, so please check me out. I'm at Smushbox, SMUSHBOX.
My favorite Super Nintendo video game is Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. I know it's a relatively simple RPG, but it's really good for like first-time RPG players who are just getting into it. This game's really important to me. When I was a little boy around 4 years old, me and my mom would play it together, so it has a special place in my heart. I can turn it on, and the beginning cutscene just brings me back with a wave of nostalgia. But like, the game has a lot of really good music in it. The game has, a good halfway decent story. I think you have to read the manual to get like the very beginning of it, but other than that, like, it's simple. It brings me back to really good days, and it's just all around entertaining for me. And that's why Final Fantasy Mystic Quest is my favorite Super Nintendo game.
Hey, we are best pals. Amazing question. What is your favorite Super Nintendo game and why? So what I went ahead and did is brought out my entire Super Nintendo collection on display for you all to see. I think the Super Nintendo is by far one of the greatest consoles ever released. It is one of my personal favorites, not only to collect for, but to play. It just, it has one of the best Super Mario games of all time, on top of bringing forward franchises from the original Nintendo, and, even bringing better games on the Super Nintendo like Kirby, Castlevania, Contra, Metroid, right? But even though this console has great titles such as those, one of my personal favorites has to be Batman Returns. Okay, so not only is this one of my favorite Batman movies, what's made after one of my most favorite Batman movies, but this game just did everything right in my opinion. Okay, so from the fighting mechanics to the gameplay to the boss fights, even the soundtrack, I just enjoy everything about this game. I try to actually give this game a full playthrough on average at least once, even sometimes twice a year, just because I enjoy playing it so much. So, to anyone watching this, if you do not own a copy of this game, do yourself a favor. Go ahead and pick it up, give it a playthrough, and then when you get done, go ahead and head to the comment section and let me know what you think, because I think you'll enjoy it just as much as I do.
So when asked to pick a favorite Super Nintendo game, I'd love to go with Super Mario World. Personally, I think it's actually one of the greatest games, if not arguably the greatest game ever made, in my opinion. But it's cliche, and I didn't want to pick that, so I didn't go with that. So what I did pick was Final Fight. Now, the whole series is amazing, but there's something about fighting games in the 90s, in the arcade, everything tied together, to me, in my opinion, that just kind of symbolizes the whole era in the evolution of video games, where we went from an innocent 8-bit era of just some kind of game, some fighting and a little bit of action and blah 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 whatever, to an escalated fighting style of game where there were more diverse types of fights and blood and gore, and it really elevated in the 90s. And I gotta say, the Final Fight to me was always a true gem when we're dealing with the arcade or the home console, just everything down the whole line. It became a favorite of mine, and I always loved the Final Fight series. Of course, I really like all fighting games if we want to go to other consoles, or even some of the fighting games on other games on Super Nintendo, but Final Fight always took the cake for me. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was because it was just produced so well by Capcom or whatever, but it's just an amazing series. And Final Fight, the first one, it was always the top king to me, in my opinion.
I really gotta make a video on that game. Hey everybody, Lee here. First off, shout out to Ben's Gaming. He reached out to me recently and asked me a very cool question, and that was basically, what is my favorite Super Nintendo game? And there's a lot to choose from, but one that kind of stood out for me was Saturday Night Slam Masters. I absolutely love this game. If you've never played Saturday Night Slam Masters, it came out in 1993, both for the arcade and Super Nintendo. I originally played the arcade version, and I just kept thinking to myself, please let there be a Super Nintendo version. And luckily there was. It's this beautiful hybrid mix of a fighting game and a wrestling game from one of my favorite companies, Capcom. I absolutely love the fact that Mike Hagar from Final Fight series is actually in this game. Seeing him come down the aisle to the wrestling ring was just such a cool experience for me. Now, I think this is one of the gems that is still out there that's very attainable. So if you've never played this, please try this game out. It is so much fun. You're going to see other characters and some cool lore that even involves Street Fighter. So, I don't know, man. For favorite games, this one's up there for me.
The fact that no two people picked the same game in this video really shows just how good the Super Nintendo library truly was. I want to thank everybody that participated in this video. Make sure you check the description. All their links are down there. Check them out, support them, and make sure you subscribe to the We Are Best Pals YouTube channel. And don't forget to leave a comment and let us know which is your favorite Super Nintendo game.